Hey there, baseball fans. Nathan Rohde and Shooter Hunt here with the latest episode of Coffee and Curveballs. We're going through the recruiting classes for 2020, Shooter. We started off with the SEC East, so naturally, next up, we've got the SEC West.
Yeah, and as loaded as the East was with their 20 recruiting class, the West may be even better.
Yeah, they sure might be. So we'll go through the SEC West today, some quick hits, and then we'll go into more in-depth on a podcast. But let's start things off with Crimson Tide and Alabama. A solid recruiting class here. Nobody in the top 100, but usually that means you get a better chance of getting some guys on campus. Starting off with right-hander Dylan Ray. He's got some two-way potential because of that athleticism and some pop in the bat. But on the mound, he can pitch in the low 90s. Obviously, that athleticism plays into his hand. So definitely a marquee recruit starting off for Alabama there with Dylan Ray.
Yeah, and he's not the only Bob Jones guy heading to Tuscaloosa. Caden Rose, really talented quarterback as well, but a shortstop, gamer, and no top 100 guys, but 3 top 200 guys there for the Crimson Tide. Bryce Eblin, a shortstop, left-handed hitter out of the state of Indiana, can also pitch it a little bit, but really good athlete. Love the way he worked throughout the fall when we saw him. Grant Knipp, physical catcher from Kentucky, big arm behind the plate, has a chance to develop in one of those middle of the order type bats, but an arm that I kind of like from the state of Alabama, Faith Academy. Eli Giles can really spin a slider, and you know in the SEC you got to be able to get those swings and misses, and that slider could develop into one of those type pitches. But solid class for Alabama headed to Tuscaloosa.
Next up, going to Fayetteville, we've got the class for the Arkansas Razorbacks. This is arguably one of the better, if not the best classes. They've got 6 guys in the top 100, but obviously with that, it could become decimated by the draft. You got Caden Wallace, a third baseman from Arkansas, can really hit, can play third base, probably one of the better bats in the 2020 class. So the Razorbacks are obviously probably really sweating him out. Then you got Mason Wynn, who finally got back on the mound this fall and showed us that mid to high 90s electricity he's got in that arm. But I like him as a hitter too. He's got some life in those hands, really twitchy. Just a gamer out there too, super competitive. And then Robert Moore. I mean, who doesn't like Robert Moore? He would be a quintessential college player, but I have a feeling that Arkansas doesn't think they're getting him either.
Yeah, this is kind of a recruiting class that I love because they're all tweeners kind of, because there's a little bit draft-wise where you're concerned about maybe Mason Wynn's height and can he could sustain that velocity over time, which I think he can. He's going to blow up there in Fayetteville. Caden Wallace probably the biggest draft threat for them just because of that power right now from the right side. Robert Moore, switch hitter. I think it's going to be 3 years in college, and then he really blooms from there. And Nate Wolgemuth, after a big fall from him, chance that he could go earlier on in the draft, but he gets on campus, that's an immediate impact arm who's looking to get those outs on his own. Really good class. Then even more, you go in depth to some guys in Arkansas. Tink Hentz, Nick Griffin can really pitch. The upside for those 2 guys, where the rawness that they have on the mound, that upside is going to be real hard to pass up come draft time. This class, again, the depth of it continues. I mean, David Calabrese from Canada. I mean, there's some question marks about when and if he'll get to campus, but you know better about that.
Yeah, so with Canada, with these guys, sometimes they have the option of taking an extra year of high school. It's basically, if you look at it from a U.S. perspective, they essentially graduate a year early. So he is 2020 eligible for the draft. But like some others, is committed to college for 21. So because of that, draft eligibility, he potentially could get to Arkansas early, but it also might be delayed a year depending on how things shake out. So there's a little bit of a caveat to him, but because he's draft eligible, we talk about him with this class for right now. But pretty talented guy that the Razorbacks could eventually see.
Yeah, we'll go into depth much more on this class because I could go on all day about each of these guys because there's a few more that I think will make a huge impact for their program.
Excellent. Well, next up, let's look at the Tigers of Auburn. You got shortstop Warner Blakely, who's a pretty good athlete out of Michigan. But then Carson Swilling, a right-hander from the state of Alabama, physical guy in the mound, can sink it. Probably a ground ball guy in the future, so definitely an arm that could find his way into a weekend rotation relatively early in his college career, I would think.
Yeah, absolutely. And then right-hander Jack Sokol out of Ohio, he shined at our future games up in Indianapolis a couple years ago. But he looks like a lot of other Ohio right-handers. Square shoulder, big tall frame, starter profile, three pitches that are really good, can really spin it. I think he'll be a mid-90s guy by the time all is said and done there in Auburn.
Excellent. So speaking of Tigers, let's now look at the Louisiana State Tigers. We talk about draft implications. LSU always sweating things out year after year. And, you know, their top guy, they've got 5 in the top 100. The best one being Drew Romo, catcher out of the Woodlands, Texas. Premium defender, switch hitter with power. Sorry, LSU, but I'm thinking 0 chance you get him. I won't say 0 chance because something can always happen, but it's pretty minimal.
Yeah, it's going to be tough to get him just with how talented he is. A switch hitting catcher who can really defend. Although if you look at last year, there was a switch hitting catcher who could really defend that went 1 overall. So maybe a small chance. Dylan Cruz, who can really swing it, was kind of up and down throughout the summer and fall, but we have a long track record with him. He really performs, but as a right-handed hitting corner outfielder, might have to get to campus to prove it, which, hey, Tiger fans, you're going to want to see this guy prove it on campus.
Yeah, you certainly are. So Blake Money's a physical right-hander out of Tennessee. I've seen him sit in the low 90s. Ty Floyd, super projectable, athletic, loose, and easy on the mound. Secondary lags behind a little bit right now, but he's one of those guys that, you know, LSU's probably actually like really dreaming about. He's going to get some draft hype, but they feel like if they get him on campus, the sky's the limit for him.
Yeah, and then they have 3 guys from Louisiana who I think they put on the Tiger colors. They start banging balls off the Intimidator there in right field. But Brody Drost can really swing it. Yeah. And when you're coming out of Barb High School, you know that guy's ready to win as soon as he steps on campus. Trey Morgan, lots of upside, left-handed power threat. And Will Safford, who we loved all summer. Shortstop, probably going to play multiple positions on the diamond, but can really swing it, and he knows how to play.
Excellent. Going over to Mississippi with the Rebels now, we got Jacob Gonzalez being their top recruit out of California, ranked number 44 for us right now in the high school class. He is one of 2 guys in the top 100. He's a pretty good athlete. The other guy being Calvin Harris, a catcher out of Iowa. Super short swing, so some impact with the bat there. Really good defender, big-time arm. They're definitely going to be sweating him out. Obviously, with Iowa, if this guy were in Texas or California or Florida, I'd say slam dunk. He's getting popped high and not making it to campus. But it's tough to see guys in Iowa. You got to really rely on that summer, and he had a good one. But sometimes those cold weather states, those guys have a little better chance of showing up on campus. But stop me if you've heard this before, but Mississippi's got a 2-sport guy coming in Robbie Ashford.
Yeah, Ashford from Hoover. Shout out Two-A-Days. Quarterback there is really talented, highly athletic. Hopefully he gets to campus because those 2-sport guys, you're definitely going to get that look because of that athleticism. But I'm a huge fan of this class. TJ McCants from Florida just continues to get better each time I see him. Good athlete from the Panhandle. Kemp Alderman, in-state, another good one from Newton Academy. And then a guy who I think could make that jump on campus over time, and I know Doug Freeman in the state of Florida is a huge fan of Luke Baker. Pitchability, long, loose left-hander. He's going to see those jumps over time once he gets to Oxford.
Excellent. Let's head to their in-state rival now in the Bulldogs of Mississippi State. They've got 4 guys in the top 100, the top one being Austin Hendrick. Guy they're probably pretty resigned to not getting because of that potential with the bat. Scouts love him. Big-time power. Did show some swing and miss this summer and fall. That raised some concerns. But I got to imagine they're banking on not getting him because of that bat in how pro-ready it probably is. But then you look at Blaze Jordan, who actually reclassed so he can enter the draft or even end up at college a year early. But that has the potential of being an impact bat right away if he can get to campus.
Yeah, and I think the shot at Duty Noble Field and getting guys to Stark Vegas is big for these 2 at the top. Hendrick has electricity in his hands, and that bat speed's unmatched in this class, in my opinion. So he's immediate impact in the middle of that order. He gets on campus. Blaze Jordan, to reclass and still perform as well as he has, might have to prove it on campus just because he's more of a corner profile as a right-handed hitter. So we'll see how that shapes up. And being an in-state guy, maybe he wants to go there and prove it and play in front of 10,000 a game. Yeah. But Kellen Clark, who's a first baseman, left-handed hitter, can really swing it, but also pitches. Low 90s guy who may provide some depth on the mound. But if you're looking for a real arm in this class, it's Jackson Fristow. And Rody, I know you like him coming out of Kentucky.
Yeah, I'm a big fan of Fristow. Saw him at the PDP. Saw him spin 2 breaking balls, get in the low 90s with that fastball. Lots to like about him. But then, again, Barb High School out of Louisiana producing guys. You got Davis Mesh, who I know you're a big fan of.
Yeah, if you're looking for that dirt ball, and I don't want to call anybody Jake Mangum, but a guy who has that type of feel to his overall game, Davis Mesh is that guy. Left-handed hitter, can swing it. He'll drop down a bunt, but he's going to play the game the right way. Mikey Tepper, a good arm that they got out of South Carolina. And Austin Reed, another guy from Kentucky, two-way potential, who's another good one.
Excellent. So let's wrap up the SEC West with Texas A&M, and the Aggies have had some really strong classes in the past, but have also been, kind of hurt by the draft recently. This one, they got one guy in the top 100, and that's Ryan Targak, shooter who you say can really swing it.
Yeah, I've liked him as a cornerback for a while now. Over the past few years, seeing him swing it, I think he has a chance to have that helium, swinging it from the left side there down in Texas. Cade Murka, one of my favorites in this class, another guy who can really play shortstop and play all over the field. I think his best days will be over time there in College Station, and he will really make an impact to the program. And then Max Anderson from Nebraska, bringing a guy down from Nebraska there. They've had a good little pipeline headed down there to A&M, but he can really swing it. The frame will almost fool you, and then you watch him for a few games, and he's putting the barrel on the ball nonstop. So those are some good ones in a solid class for an A&M.
Yeah, and they also, I mentioned them going out of state to Nebraska. They also went really far west and get Kalai Harrison, a shortstop out of Ponahu High School in Hawaii. He was an area code games participant, so certainly a guy that could have some impact for the Aggies. But that's the SEC West. Obviously, the SEC East has already been posted, so be sure to check that out if you haven't already. And as always, we'll go into more depth on a podcast about a lot of these classes, so be sure to stay tuned for that on prepbaseballreport.com. But as always, for Shooter Hunt, I'm Nathan Rohde. This was Coffee and Curveballs, and until next time, we'll see you guys at the ballpark.